Got it.
Good morning, everybody. This is Suu-Va with the State of California and with the National CERT Association. Thank you for joining us today. This webinar is the first of 3 for the hybrid CERT training designed to teach CERT program managers how to properly implement the training. We'll be taking your questions. Please make sure to type your questions in the chat box and we'll be monitoring that. This webinar is scheduled for 2 hours. And after the webinar is done, we'll be posting a link to the recording on the website, which will be shown during the webinar. And at the end of the 3 webinars, there will be a post-test. And that'll be an evaluation as well as a quiz. And upon passing that post-test, you'll get a certificate of training for these webinars. Once again, it is very important that programs who want to use the hybrid CERT training watch all 3 webinars to learn all the guidance. Just like regular CERT basic training, there are rules to using this. And you'll be learning the rules throughout the 3 webinars. Okay, next slide, please. Before we start, the hybrid CERT training started in Athens, Utah, and that is in FEMA Region 8. So we have Katrina Wilhelms on to say hello. Katrina.
Hi, thanks Suu-Va, and thanks everyone for being on as a community preparedness officer in support of the CERT program in our Region 8 states. We are very honored to have the state of Utah presenting on the hybrid training today. We are very excited about the training because it really brings forth a capability that has not necessarily been brought forth before in terms of combining the virtual and the in-person delivery. And so we're very excited to have James and his team talk with you and show you today about the hybrid training. And so if you want to go to the next slide, I just want to start by saying that FEMA really depends on the state coordinators and the local sponsoring organizations to supervise the volunteers and their training at all times. So just as long as the course objectives are being met, FEMA does believe that the use of the hybrid training is accepted, but only at the discretion of the state, tribe, or territory CERT coordinators, and respectively of the local CERT sponsoring organizations. Currently, there are 22 states and territories that have approved the use of this training, and you're going to see later on in the webinar, there's going to be a slide up. You're going to see all the lists of all the states and territories that have approved the training. And you know, I saw the emails going around and seeing everybody very excited about this, especially in the times that we're in now. So I'm glad to see there's such a buy-in for this type of training. And just to note, for those states and territories that haven't approved this training just yet, NCA is asking that you email them for confirmation just so they can keep track of all the states and territories and tribes that are actually accepting the training and running it. So other than that, I will stop talking and give more time back to you all and getting to learn more about this hybrid training. So thanks everybody and enjoy.
Thank you, Katrina. And yes, we do want to do a couple more things to move on. One is to ensure that people understand that this is an alternative. This is not the new way of delivering CERT training or the only way to do a hybrid CERT training or online CERT training. This is one of the ways that's been approved by FEMA and is pending approval by your state and territory CERT coordinator for use in your state. Your state may opt to want to use a different hybrid system or a different online system. And at their discretion, because every state's a little different and every CERT program is a little different. But by approving this for your state or territory, that means as a program manager, you have the option to utilize the hybrid CERT training as part of your CERT basic curriculum. We're going to go over some of the rules and requirements to make sure that as you implement this, you're not mixing and matching too much. And you'll be seeing some of the leeway that you have to implement this properly. We want to ensure, just like with CERT basic, the general rules of all 9 modules, right? And being taught, you can add, but you can't take away. It's going to be very similar with this hybrid CERT training. You're going to see how it's implemented in Utah and how other programs have implemented and tested it outside of Utah. And this is the current guidance. Now, we may revisit this guidance in a year after more programs have used it and kind of see, hey, here are some ways that programs can use it, or here's some new options or new ideas on how to use the materials or new guidance that's added on to make it more effective. And we want to hear that from the field. So you're going to have plenty of opportunities for that. But just to ensure that. And with the NCA, the National Association, what our role is really to help promote a product that has been approved, right? The NCA was not involved in the creation of the hybrid CERT training, but has been involved with making sure that it's appropriate CERT training, and also involved in helping other states and territories kind of learn what the hybrid CERT training is and why it would be useful in their state and territory. So we want to emphasize that as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to James. Oh, actually, one more slide. Sorry about that. Along with the NCA, the Lisa's California campaign, which is in California, where I'm in, that's a preparedness campaign, which CERT is a major part of. And with the pandemic, we saw the great opportunity for programs in California to have to use some kind of alternative to CERT training. And so we saw the hybrid CERT training and said, hey, we want to bring this in too, especially since the NCA, the National CERT Association, has embraced it and said that they're willing to promote this training outside of Utah as well. So with California, we also contracted with 360 Immersive, the developers of the hybrid CERT training, which worked with James and Rachel, to add additional functionality. One, we did make it available on our learning management system for California CERT programs, which means that you will get a certificate that may say CalOES on it, California Office of Emergency Services. Our preference, though, is that for people outside California to use the Utah LMS when using the training. You don't have to, but we prefer that, and that's mostly for tracking purposes. You're going to see that the California version and the Utah version will eventually be exactly identical, right? The idea is that there's updates that we have implemented in California. We don't implement them without considering what the Utah team thinks. And we want to make sure that 5 years down the line, there isn't 10 different versions of it as different states updated or add features and everything. We want to work together to make sure that there's one vetted set of training, even if it's available on different learning management systems. Utah is making it free on their learning management system for all CERT programs to take, which is great. It's also going to be free on the California system. And the nice thing is there's going to be redundancy. If for some reason grant funding for either those two LMSs go away, we actually have the other LMS with the same training that you're going to have. With our partnership at Lisa's California, we're also adding back the triage module. The training was updated for the 2020 curriculum, which meant that it removed the triage module because we wanted to be as true to the FEMA curriculum as possible. But as FEMA has stated, you're welcome as a CERT program at your discretion to add the triage module back in during your training. So it'll be an optional module on the hybrid CERT training. We also added additional ADA accessibility features. In the state of California, we take ADA accessibility very seriously, even for online training, which means that people with any disability will be able to access the training and utilize it on both mobile and desktop platforms. We're also going to be adding a Mandarin version. So Utah has made it available in both English and Spanish. And with the funding we're able to put through Lisa's California, we're also adding a Mandarin version, which will once again also be available on the Utah LMS as well. So that is the partnership that we're bringing. And if you actually go to the next slide, you'll see all the different partners that are involved in this. So the University of Utah received a grant to create this project and worked with the Utah Division of Emergency Management with their expertise, and James really helping to craft this training. And I will say, very impressed with what the training looks like. It's very different than the typical online training that you're going to take, the ICS trainings or other trainings where you're doing most of the reading. This really simulates a classroom-based environment with a lecture and PowerPoint presentation. So we're very happy with that. We're also partnering with Merit. So Merit is a digital badging system. And basically, we're partnering with Merit to give digital certificates for people to take the training online. LMS stands for Learning Management System. When you go online and take training, it has to be housed to a portal that can interact with the participants and also capture their progress as they're training. So whenever you take training online, you're always going to be interacting with some kind of learning management system. Learning management systems aren't free, and they have a bandwidth capacity. So you can't just create a training, you have to have a learning management system. Many universities have a learning management system for their online training. Very few state agencies have it, right? It's not something that you normally would purchase as part of your state agency or emergency management plan. But if you do training, then you typically will have it if you do online. So yeah, that's it. So I think, James, I could turn it back over to you.
Rachel, go ahead.
The next slide. Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Brown, the Hybrid CERT Training National Program Manager at the University of Utah Rocky Mountain Center for Occupational Environmental Health. Any questions on the program can be directed to me at onlinecert@utah.edu. We've worked very closely with James and Jennifer. James from the state of Utah. He is our subject matter expert at the Utah Division of Emergency Management. James, do you want to give us a quick intro?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, as Rachel said, my name is James Ray. I am with the Utah Division of Emergency Management, and I've been lucky to be a part of this entire process from the beginning of helping to build out all of the program guidance on how to implement this, and then working with Rachel and Jennifer really closely on helping to populate the content for the learning management system.
Jennifer, do you want to give us a quick intro?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming today. I'm Jennifer Lastra. I'm the CEO and co-founder of 360 Immersive. We're in Boise, Idaho, and our role in the CERT program is to take the learning and get it published into a course so that everybody can have access to it. And we've also developed some virtual reality and interactive simulations as part of the CERT course to expand the learning capabilities of our adult learners. So we'll be demonstrating a little bit of that a little later on. Thank you for having me.
James, if you can do the next slide. So these webinars, they will be available both for the slides and the presentation. It is recorded, so you can find it at onlinecert.org or the slides on our link for the program guides. The next slide. So I'll be discussing the sponsors, the timeline, and the proof states that we have so far. Also be going over the brief program description, program benefits, our website resources, and LMS. Jennifer will be going over our interactive virtual reality app, and James will be going over setting up the hybrid training and recruitment, the students' online experience, and how to prepare and conduct the hands-on portion. We'd like to thank our program sponsors. The program is grant funded by the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, University of Utah Rocky Mountain Center. We have a partnership with University of Texas Health Science Center in Houston, Texas A&M, and the University of Michigan, together forming the Prevention, Preparedness, and Response, PTUR Consortium. So here's a brief timeline for our program. It originally began in May 2017. We had FEMA's review and support in March last year. James, Jennifer, and I presented at the National CERT Association Conference in May of last year in San Diego, and they did review and approved it and really liked the program. We partnered with Merit to do digital credentials in March, and then updated the program with the FEMA 2019 curriculum back in April. And then, as Suu-Va mentioned, we partnered with CalOS and Listos to add additional features such as triage, additional ADA components, and then translation into Mandarin. And then we are here today with a nationwide rollout in September. If you haven't already, please sign up at the onlinecert.org for the program and review our program guide. It has links and resources to recruit students, create your own registration portal, it has course agendas, evaluation certificates, and flyers. And please give us your feedback once you have reviewed everything and highlighted your courses. We'd like to know your experience, the value of what the program has done, what you got out of the training, and any recommendations on how we can improve the program. We will be collecting data and use to develop a publication and data analysis, probably at the end of this year or next year. To enter your feedback, you can use the link at onlinecert.org. And here is the list that Katrina mentioned. We have 23 states so far. It's available also on onlinecert.org. We are continually updating it. To the next slide.
I'm gonna pause right there. Can the presenters all turn off or close out their Outlook? We're hearing the Outlook message ping. And I think that's either a calendar update or an email. If you can just turn that off if you're presenting, that'd be great. Thank you.
So if you do not see your state listed, please contact your CERT state coordinator, or you can include their contact information in the chat or email their information to info@nationalcert.org. And then the National CERT Association will contact them. Any questions about the states that have approved can also be directed to info@nationalcert.org. So here's the timeline for the remaining webinars. We did have one in August with the overview of the hybrid training and the nationwide rollout. And then today's kickoff webinar. We have 2 more webinars, September 29th on the guidance on how to implement the hands-on skills training and disaster simulations. And then also the October 6th review of differences between the traditional classroom versus the hybrid training. You can sign up on the onlinecert.org. And we do have certificates available if you do complete all 3 webinars, as Suu-Va mentioned, kind of a train the trainer for the hybrid version. It will be available after the last webinar on October 6th, and it will be issued as a digital merit certificate. And then a link will be sent out to everybody at the end of the course. And I will be turning the time over to James to go over more details on the program. Thanks, everyone.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. Obviously, this online basic CERT course is a comprehensive lecture portion of all 9 units of the National Standardized Curriculum, available in English and Spanish, and is hoped to prepare the student as well as possible for the practical hands-on portion, which will be planned and delivered by the local registered CERT program. The local registered CERT program has students sign up on the program's course registration portal, and afterwards provides the students the information to take the course online. The students then go to the website, onlinecert.org, and follow the directions to start the online course, and takes the lecture portion of the course online, which is about 12 hours. They can learn at their own pace and at their own convenience. Once they're completed, the students will be prompted to print and submit a certificate of online portion completion to their local registered CERT program. The registered CERT program will plan a practical day, which is about 16 hours, where they will conduct and the students will pass off all the hands-on skills in the course, learn about local plans, participate in a disaster simulation. The local program determines the parameters for this practical portion. The in-person practical portion may be completed in 16 hours, but must be adequate to complete each required practical in order for a certificate of full course completion to be given. There is a CERT instructor guidance CERT skills checklist that has a comprehensive list of the practicals needing to be passed off. And then the students use the participant CERT skills checklist to pass off each skill. Using this tool allows an individual to start the CERT training anytime, 365 days a year, and finishes their training with their local program on scheduled practical hands-on days. Students can access the online course on their smart devices or computer and take the course at their own pace and convenience. The online course progress will be saved and can be resumed at the student's convenience. This hybrid approach may help reduce common CERT course delivery barriers, such as time commitment for instructors and students. The use of this strategy may also make this training available to those commonly unable to take the traditional course, such as mothers, youth, or individuals at work or school. This tool may also be useful for traditional classes whose students need to make up a missed unit. As you can see, the hybrid CERT is not all online. Hybrid constitutes of both an online as well as a classroom portion. The online covers all 9 units, and then the classroom portion is all of the remaining hands-on practicals and activities that are inside of those units that they couldn't do in an online learning environment. Now, understand that not everyone can take a learning course online, whether for lack of technological infrastructure or for physical or mental limitations. For this reason, it may be necessary to hold a traditional in-person basic CERT course every once in a while. However, for those who are comfortable with online courses, this tool can help provide learning through the standardized curriculum at the convenience and pace of the individual. Using this tool allows an individual to start the CERT training anytime, 365 days a year, and finishes their training with their local program on scheduled practical hands-on days. You see there's 2 different certificates that you as a program manager or course manager would need to be considering. The online certificate, which is this one, you can see that, does not certify full course completion. It only proves that they have completed that online portion, the whole lecture portion. Now, your local registered CERT program issues an official certificate after everything has been completed. So here's what completion looks like. The online portion gets completed, then all of the required items in the CERT skills checklist are checked off. The CERT program manager can then have confidence in issuing a local certificate of full course completion. Now, understand this goes in line with what the CERT program manager's course, the train the trainer course, the basic CERT course instructor guide. There are certain things that you can't change, but there are some things that you can. The national standard is don't take away from the curriculum, but you can add depending on your sponsoring program's policies and what they suggest and say. The online course, you don't have to do anything with. It's already been created and it meets the national standard. And then obviously the course required skills and activities, you don't want to change those. Varying from those would make it so that the student's not getting exposed to all the principles, which would mean you would be taking away from. So don't take away, but you can add to. But the things that you can change, obviously there are optional skills that your local jurisdiction may want to consider. There is the triage unit, the hazard annexes that are all optional that you could change and vary from. The way you market your local course, the way you register your students, how you deliver those hands-on components, those can vary. Obviously, within this training, we are sharing best practices that, if followed, have shown to show good results. Also, how you do your mock disaster simulation, and obviously your own local certs, your certificates of course completion. Those are all dependent on you and how you plan on doing that at your jurisdictional level. There have been a lot of local program managers that have had concerns about an online learning platform, and many of these concerns have been overcome, including it's been found that administering the online basic CERT course and the hands-on practical portion of the course in the ways that this guidance suggests, that there is little to no gap in the students' learning of the principles in the online portion and the application of those principles in the hands-on practical portion of the training. It's also found that students adequately build relations and form as a team within the 16 hours of classroom time, and that student learning and retention may be greater than that of the traditional approach. Students must stay engaged with the online learning management system in order to advance in the curriculum, followed by multimedia, knowledge quizzes, and end-of-unit tests. The student has to get 70% or higher in their unit quizzes and final exam in order to complete the online portion. Also, in the practical portion of the training, each skill has to be checked off by an instructor and specifically provides a hands-on experience for every skill. If you're following the administrative best practices, the local program may see an improvement in course completion rates. This format has shown heightened student engagement and high energy for all 16 classroom hours, and an increase in the student's overall value of the course, which has a direct long-term positive impact on the CERT program. Here's an example of a timeline that your program might face. Obviously, you want to give students enough time to register for your course and then start taking their online portion. You know, that's about 12 hours. Here's an example. If a student were to start and end their training throughout this entire time frame, obviously many students may be coming on board and taking the class online portion at their own time frames, obviously. But the way that you market your course and the way that you get your students to register for it all depends on whether or not those students will access. There is a suggestion that if the time gap between when the student starts their class and ends the online portion compared to when that classroom portion starts, if that gap is 6 months to 1 year, it may be recommended to require the student to retake the online portion. Obviously, the local program decides. You decide what that time gap would be. But obviously, if you don't use it, you lose it. And so there's a suggestion there. As a program administrative best practice, you would want to cut off your registration time at least a few weeks before the classroom portion starts, because you want to give any of those students who signed up very last enough time to be able to go through the online course. And to also send various reminders and whatnot to the students, because we all procrastinate, and we don't want to be seen as we don't want to set our students up for failure, obviously. So reminding them and helping them to progress. From an administrative standpoint, you would just be simply reminding them in preparation for their course. And then your course, obviously there's multiple ways to kind of deliver it. One of the best practices is 2 8-hour days. Seems to be effective. Rachel, if you want to talk about this, I will go ahead and navigate over to the website.
Of course. So on our website, we have several resources for you. There's obviously the link for the course, available in both English and Spanish. The CERT program guide, FAQs, general questions that are being asked. Just a second.
If you click on this link, it will go to this website. You'll notice the URL isn't the same, but onlinecert.org will always go to the latest version of this, and then all of those tools are reflected there.
We do have the feedback from there as well, and the links to the webinars. There is how to conduct CERT training in times of pandemic. Also feedback, we would like to have feedback for both students and program managers. And then we have a link in there too if anybody would like to support the program. James, would you let me go with the flyer as well, or?
Yeah, sure.
So here's our flyer. It has links, obviously, to the program guide, and then the course. This flyer is recommended audience for the program managers and instructors, not particularly the participants or volunteers. If you do have any questions, online cert@utah.edu. James, anything you want to add on the flyer?
Yeah, and just to make sure everybody understands, this flyer is this particular flyer is not intended for just the general public. This particular flyer is intended to face you as program managers, instructors. You can use this flyer to promote it within your states to other programs so that they know about this tool and then they can get access to it. The links to it provide kind of that whole access point that those local programs may need to be able to start any of this. So that's a tool that's provided to you.
I do want to add real quick, at the bottom, it has a link to Jennifer's virtual reality apps. It's CERT, Certifications Preparatory. It's the link in either Apple or Android.
Yeah, and obviously all of you have access to this slide deck. It's in the toolkit that all of these tools are into, and you can use this slide deck to kind of help access to any of these documents as well. But if you click on that link, here's exactly where it goes to, and you can see that virtual reality component right there.
For our online learning management system, it does include slides that have voiceover and transcription. It saves your progress. It's interactive with knowledge checks. There is several videos is optional. The end of unit quizzes and final exam, you have to have at least 70% to pass. The online participant manual there's a direct link to link into for any questions for the knowledge checks and exam. You can't skip forward, so you must stay engaged. It also works via mobile, tablet, and desktop, Apple and Android. And the virtual reality simulations are available both on your desktop and WebGL and your mobile app. There is an option also for live IT for any course questions, and they do go to me. It's through HubSpot right at the bottom. So if anybody has some concerns or questions, they can either go through HubSpot or the online cert@utah.edu. Thanks, James.
All right, we'll turn the time over to Jennifer to talk about the virtual reality stuff.
So thank you. Some of the benefits of virtual reality, we'll get into the next couple of slides, but really what we're trying to do is to create as much realistic and realism of a real scenario and bring that to our adult learners so that they can practice. Practice makes perfect, practice makes progress. Just practice over and iterate over and over again. So there are 2 virtual reality simulations that are available within the app, and you'll see that in the next couple of slides. There's a link, and they are for the aftermath of an earthquake and a triage module. And when we talk about why was there a decision to add in VR training, the reality of the situation is we are looking for different methods to blend different learning styles. We all learn a little bit differently, especially based off of our generation that we in the workforce where we are right now. So we really wanted to blend visual, auditory, and then allow learners to self-explore. And that's kind of what people enjoy. The next slide really talks about not only the outcomes, but we want to build confidence. We want to build confidence in people that may not have experienced having to triage people or have been maybe the aftermath of a fire or an earthquake or something like that, to give them exposure to these different types of environments. And the more we can do that, the more we can create meaningful thoughtful and memorable experiences. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for engagement, and we want to make it fun. We want to make these fun so people can self-explore and do it safely, I guess, is kind of the biggest thing. Building that confidence is huge, though. The next slide, so right here, when you get this slide deck, you'll be able, that Earthquake VR is a hyperlink, and this is what it looks like. So I'm going to take control of the screen here real quick. And what it will look like is this. When you select that hyperlink, you're going to come into an environment that looks like this. So you're going to have a start button. And in this scenario, I'm just using my keyboard and mouse. But as you can see, you can look all around in 360 degrees. I do not have the audio on, but there is audio that goes along with this. And then you just use your arrow keys on your desktop, and you can navigate around. And really what these modules are about hazard identification. So here we have a downed power line. We may have a ruptured water main, hazard identification, situational awareness. We potentially have somebody in the rubble over here, if you can see that. We've got some smoke. And so we're looking for, again, that situational awareness. We have a tank right here, very close to a home. And a fire. So all of these can be selected. And as you go around, you are identifying the things that you see. Again, a little bit more self-exploration. We're going to identify that we have a body in here, same concept. And we're tracking for what we're observing. And then there's some quiz questions that come in and basically talk about the stability of the scene and what, as a CERT volunteer, do you have authority to do or to not do. So I wanted to share a little bit of that with you, and I'll turn it back over to, that's what you can expect, but I'll turn it back over now to James and Rachel.
Danielle, if you'd like to give me screen sharing.
So while they're fixing the screen sharing situation, that hyperlink will lead you directly into being able to access the earthquake simulation just with your keyboard and mouse. You don't have to have a virtual reality headset, so hardware is really not an issue, or you can use your phone or tablet and navigate around that way as well.
All right, just want to double check. Can we see the screen okay?
Yes.
All right, and can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. From your perspective as a course administrator, there are these 4 steps that we're going to be going through. In today's webinar, we'll be going through steps 1, 2, and 3, but step 4 will be for the webinar on September 29th, and we'll go into details on that. The first thing we're going to address is setting up your local course registration platform and recruiting for the course, which includes the how to set up, as well as those tips and advertising, marketing, your training. There is a tool that is set up for you. There's this registration platform template that's kind of pre-created. We utilize the free service of Google to be able to create this and share this. But understand, you don't have to use Google products to do what we're talking about. But perhaps the verbiage that's inside may be useful to you to kind of help you in be able to set the right expectation for your students and help communicate with them clearly. If the local program broadcasts the online training link prior to capturing the content info of the interested individuals, then the program manager or the instructors won't have any way of knowing who is taking the online training and will not have a way of communicating with them. So these best practices mitigate against this issue and empowers the program with the ability to communicate. with those who are interested. So as suggested here, set up your own registration profile for your own local course. And you likely already have your own registration portal for your own local program. You want to make sure that you use the right words to set the right expectation, and determine your class size based off of your available instructors. And that will help you determine your course cap. And again, most of the work has already been done for you. Just copy the verbiage and tailor it for your program use. This is kind of what it looks like if you click on that link in the slide deck. There is a Google form that's been created. The intent obviously is this is a template that's available to everybody. You would just copy this template for your own use and tailor it to meet your own needs. But pay close attention to the verbiage and how it's being communicated to see what you're communicating in terms of the students registering, so you can set that right expectation. You set the parameters of what data that you're collecting from your students, contact information, name, etc., whatever you want. But on the submission side, if you click submit, you'll notice the verbiage on the back end after somebody is done, and it gives that whole thank you notice, but then it gives all the details. So that way you can set up the registration platform to give them the link to the online course after they have registered. And there's best practices and other tools out there for Google to kind of help you automate many of these processes, but that's up to you to determine how you would like to do that. But pay close attention to the verbiage on those to help you with setting up that correct expectation management. The next slide is all of the recruiting and advertising. Again, you want to use the right words to set the right expectation. All the work has been done for you. You can just copy this publisher file that's available in the toolkit, and you can tailor it to meet your own needs. Again, you don't have to do it this way, but there are some best practices that are shown with this. One thing that you'll notice is the registration or the link to take the online course is not in this community facing flyer that you would use. What would be there is your own local registration link to have your students register with you first, and then post that, then you give them the link to the online training. But you can utilize any of the verbiage that's in here to kind of help set that expectation of, hey, you're going to be doing online part first, and then you'll be coming to a classroom portion on a particular date, and you can kind of help communicate those dates in that location. And then you can tailor it to meet your own local jurisdictions the way you would like it to look. So that's an idea there for you and a tool that's been created to kind of help you out. Also, the next part, and I'm going to kind of go through this a little quickly, but what does it look like to the student? You know, your local program may have created your marketing materials, you've sent it out there, and now the students are clicking on the link, they're registering, and then they're starting their online course. So they would go to onlinecert.org, they would access it there, they'd register, they would create their own user profile in the learning management system, the online learning management system. Again, this is not something that you as a program manager have to manage or track or any of that. This whole system keeps track of all of this, but it's the student's responsibility to maintain their own username and password for this learning management system. If there's problems, obviously they can contact Rachel Brown, and be able to kind of get things fixed on that system, but that's not something you have to manage. But once the student registers, it would look something like this. There's a first name, last name, they set up their registration, their own username and password, and then they would see a button that looks like this. They would click on it, and then all of the units are there, and you'll see there's more than 9 units here because each single unit has been broken down into half segments. So they would click on this button to start it. Once they do that, it would look like this. Then they can launch that particular unit. They can do any unit in any order. As you can see, Unit 9 does not unlock until all of the other units have been done. Once they launch a course, then the student would be seeing content like this. There's a student manual electronically available that they can follow along with. It's the exact same as the PDF manual that's on FEMA's websites. You'll notice closed captioning capabilities, as well as it encourages them to take breaks. There are interactive links to external resources that they can take time, if they wish to explore further while they're in that subject. There's interactive buttons to open content boxes. And then once you've opened all of them, then it allows you to move to the next slide. There's knowledge checks. If you get it wrong, this is what it would look like. If you get it right, then it allows you to continue. There are embedded videos. As you know from traditional classes, many times there's not enough time to show all the videos. All of the videos are embedded within this learning management system so that it can kind of help reinforce what they have learned. At the end of each unit is a unit quiz, and they have to pass 70% or higher on each unit in order to pass that unit. It kind of looks like this. If they get it incorrect versus if they get it correct. And then they can see their score. The one part that's being worked on, I know lots of local program managers have wondered, hey, can I as a program manager see their score? And right now, no, you can't. But what you would need to know as a program manager is if they passed or failed, basically. And when they produce to you a certificate for each unit, or the final certificate, of course, of online portion completion, then that is proof to you that they have passed all of those various units. The student can review their quiz results as well. And then at the end, it encourages them to then go on to the next unit, at which then they would click on the next one. So once you've passed your unit, that designation will show, as you can see right here where it says passed. And once the student completes all 9 units, then a certificate of online portion completion will be automatically generated and sent to them. Rachel talked about the digital merits. When the student completes a unit, the system will automatically generate an email to them with a certificate for that unit saying, hey, here is proof that I've completed that unit. So that you as a program manager, if the student were to send that to you, then you could utilize that for any way that may benefit you. If they go to the merits application online, they have record of all of their merits that are there. So those are automatically created, and so those students can then send those merits to whomever they choose. The hazard annexes are inside of there. Obviously, it's optional, but they are built in. And then there's an optional triage unit that's also coming soon. As Suu-Va with the state of California said, they are developing that, and then that will be available here as well. The next step is preparing for the hands-on classroom portion of the training. But I wanted to pause for a moment there, just double check. Can everybody still hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great, James. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right, so preparing for the hands-on, obviously you as a program need to do some preparations. The agenda, the instructors, the students, the classroom materials and the props, and the best practices are shown in this program guide, and we'll show you that. There's the link to that if you want to go straight to the program guide. This link goes to that whole toolkit, that shared Google Drive that has all of these tools and resources in it. One of the tools that are in there, let me back up. I want to show you the toolkit. So if you click on the link, it'll go straight to this toolkit. And you'll see these webinar PowerPoint slides that are in there as well. But you'll also see some of the flyers, the sample agendas, the program guide, the instructor guide, the participant search checklist, the example of the registration platform. And if you want any of these products, obviously all that you would need to do is right click on it, download it, or make a copy for your own use. And then that way you then own it. You can adjust it to your own needs rather than changing it here for the whole world to basically see. But you'll notice a couple of other things. There's all the Spanish materials as well as all of some sample additional products for the search skills checklist component. One of the things that you'll notice inside of that toolkit are the search skills checklists. These are one of your primary tools that you're going to be utilizing to make sure to help you move through all of the content that is left over from the lecture portion that the student did online. The content includes both the comprehension-based activities as well as skills. So you would then do all 70 of the skills on the list and utilize the instructor guide search skills checklist to help you, and then the students would keep their own participant search skills checklist. So here's what the instructor guide search skills checklist looks like. If you click on that link, it'll bring you straight to it. And then you can print this out and utilize it during class, but also especially for preparing for the class. The first 2 pages are some instructions for instructors to help interpret this correctly and to give them some ideas on how to prepare for their course. One thing that you'll notice in the way that this is set up, try to zoom in a little bit there for you so you can see it. These first 4 are not necessarily unit specific. You can see it kind of categorized by unit. So all of Unit 1's comprehension-based activities are right there. And then it goes to Unit 2 and all of those activities in sequence to what you find in the basic CERT course instructor guide. And then you can see all of the corresponding page numbers of where you can find each skill and instruction for performing those skills for you so that you can kind of get prepared for those. Anything with an asterisk means that there's some preparation for you. So whether that's a simulation scenario needs to be built, or materials need to be gathered, or whatever it may be, there's some preparation for you to consider for that particular skill. You'll notice that each skill has a number assigned to it, 1 through 70. So it can kind of help you navigate to say, oh, hey, which skill are we on? And so all the way up to Unit 8 and the remaining skills that are inside of Unit 8. And then Unit 9 is just the mock disaster simulation. You can see their number, skill number 4, have them perform in the mock disaster simulation, and there's a time estimate. And again, these are estimates. Estimates are based on some of the best practices in terms of how to organize things for best optimal time management. Whether it goes longer or shorter is up to you, but our recommendation is if you decide to go shorter, then make sure that you're not putting the students at a disadvantage. The goal is that the students have learned, and you want them to be able to pass those off if they have learned those skills. What you'll also notice is the participant CERT skills checklist mirrors exactly what the instructors have, except the participants are not seeing the page numbers for the instructor guide pages. They're just seeing the page numbers for their participant manual on where to reference to. So the participant CERT skills checklist can be utilized. The student can put their name on it. They can keep it. You can kind of utilize this. Imagine, you know, Boy Scouts with their merit badges. And this is a way that they can kind of sequentially, each skill at a time, sign off each skill and date it. And so the instructor would then initial and date all of those. And then the student is responsible for keeping that. And then you'll notice that the corresponding skill number and the corresponding units all match exactly what is described in the instructor's version of this tool. Next is your agenda. Obviously, there are some of the skills that determine, you know, what you're going to do with your agenda, but you want to be able to set up your agenda. There are optional items as well as skill number 2 and number 3 that require some significant consideration on your side, because those are the parts that, you know, constitute a difference for your local program. Is how does CERT fit in your local plans? What are the additional training opportunities? What are the hazards near you? Those all of those options, when you consider those, may increase time or decrease time depending on what your decision is as a local program. As you'll notice, when you click to view that, we'll just review quickly some of those optional components. You'll see some of the optional ones that are here. The basic CERT course instructor guide does verbalize that there are some things that it would suggest you doing, but they are optional. Some of those components were included here. And then you'll notice if you read numbers 2 and number 3, the components there, how that specifically relates to your local program. And you'll notice some of the optional ones also in other units as well that you can see. So you can review that and take a good hard look at that. There is a sample agenda that we've created that you can tailor to then meet your needs. Again, the work's already kind of been done for you. Just copy this and then tailor it to meet your needs. This is what it would look like. Some of the best practices for how to administer that, you can kind of see some of those aspects when you look at this sample agenda. Some of the various activities you'll notice that these numbers correspond with the numbers in the unit as well. So these components for each of those skills. And basically when you're doing your agenda, you would basically just move sequentially from one to the next, and so forth. Make sure you build in time breaks. There are some skills you'll see that we broke out for station concepts rather than classroom group room learning concepts. Those are because these particular units require a lot more setup and as well as a lot more time. They're more time exhaustive. And so obviously you can determine how is the best way, but here are some suggestions to kind of help you along your way as you seek to then organize your own classroom hands-on practical portion of the student's training. Next slide, you'll see some of the preparation needs to consider. Obviously, you need space for the practicals. Follow that instructor guide CERT skills checklist to kind of help you. You'll need those training props and the resources for each of those hands-on practicals. A best practice, and this would even apply to even the traditional course, would be to have at least one instructor for every 1 to 6 students. That enables the instructors to not be overwhelmed as to how many people that they need to keep an eye on and coach. And then obviously your sponsor, you would need a local sponsor sanctioned certificate of course completion. There are some different ways to deliver this, but the recommended way is to have the students complete the entire online course before coming to the first day of class for that hands-on practical portion of the training. That seems to produce the best results. There are some courses that like to break it up and say, hey, student, go home, complete units 1 and 2 online, and then we'll come to class and do the skills for units 1 and 2. But you'll see some things happen because of that. A best practice is to have the students complete the entire online portion prior to the first day of the practical portion of the training. It's up to the local program to determine how they will schedule the hands-on practical portion of the training. It has been reported that it seems to work best in 2 8-hour days. If the local program decides to break the 16 hours down into smaller segments, best results have been found to have the students complete the entire online course prior to the first day of class. If the local program decides not to do this, they may find the following common side effects. Students that did not complete the online segment assigned, and many student questions that show a lack of pre-exposure to principles that are necessary for doing those hands-on practical portion of the training. Students like to procrastinate and they push things off and then they don't do it, kind of things like that. So best results have the student complete everything online before they come to the first day of class. Now there is a way you can use this for the traditional delivery. If you're doing a traditional delivery and a student misses a module, then they could come onto the online learning environment and take that module and then provide to you through that merit proof that they've completed that module. And then your instructors can then follow up with them to then go over all of the associated hands-on practicals. There's other options provided in the program guide that you can see as well. You need to prepare your instructors. There's going to be a big learning curve. This course delivery strategy necessitates having more instructors in the classroom environment for effective learning. Coaching of skills as well as time management. However, the local program will see that training administrative costs will go down and administrative time commitment decreases by about half. This training strategy validates the need for having CERT instructors attend the CERT Train the Trainer course and the need for instructors to have a sound understanding of the skills they are to coach the students in. So because the Train the Trainer course, emphasizes the importance of the instructor's ability to be able to describe, demonstrate, and coach each skill, what you'll notice is in many of the traditional deliveries of the basic CERT course, that commonly, not all the time, but commonly, instructors kind of get proficient at one or two modules of their choosing, and they understand the skills there. But you'll find that they may not be confident or not even know how to demonstrate or coach the activities correctly for many of the other skills. So a suggestion is to meet with your instructors before that classroom portion of the training starts to make sure all of your instructors are proficient in all of the skills associated with every single activity that's within there. Again, there'll be a big learning curve because there's no lecturing anymore. That's all been done online in that online learning environment. There's little to no PowerPoint anymore because your focus is going from one skill to the next skill to the next skill, basically. Also, provide plenty of reminders for your students to complete that online portion and overcome and to come with their online course completion certificate. All right, you got to give them lots of reminders because they forget. It can be expected that individuals will procrastinate or forget, so reminder emails and scheduled calendar invites for the classroom practical portion may be very helpful. It's also important for the student to bring proof of online completion to the practical portion of the training so that an instructor can verify and check off that step. You'll notice in the participant CERT skills checklist that one of the things that they have to check off is number 1, the online course completion certificate has been received. And then the instructor initials that and dates that. So having the students bring that proof to class is very helpful that way. Here's a suggestion for a little bit of a time frame, maybe to kind of help you with emailing reminders, that calendar invite. One of the pro tips that we wanted to share is that message that's provided post-registration. If you look at your registration portal for your students to register with you, this message right here is a good message to duplicate and to resend to them multiple times. Also, looks like I've skipped forward here. One moment. So that's it on terms of preparing for the course, the students' hands-on experience, setting up your registration platform, marketing. Those are some ideas and suggestions. And I just want to remind you again that this whole toolkit is readily available to you. Again, just how to get to there. You can click on that slide in the link, or if you go to onlinecert.org to access that toolkit, click on the online CERT program guide, and then that guide brings you to all of the information that you need. Every single tool is there. You can click on each of those And then if you just want to see the whole toolkit as at large, at the very bottom of this 4-page guide is this link to the entire toolkit. When you click on that link, you'll see all of the tools represented there. And I want to make sure that you all have access to all of those tools so that you can then utilize them to help you prepare. And again, if any of you have questions or issues related to anything with any of the tools, Rachel Brown and I will be available to help you and to answer questions and any of those components. The next webinars that we're going to be doing is September 29th. Our focus for that webinar is about how to conduct that hands-on classroom portion of the training. So tell others about that. We hope that you and many others will be able to come and join on that to kind of help give you some clarification there. And then on October 6th, we will be reviewing those differences between a traditional delivery versus how is it different when you are delivering this hands-on, this hybrid version. And you can sign up for these webinars at onlinecert.org as well. Rachel, I'll turn the time over to you to talk about supporting hybrid CERT. And then I think we'll be going into questions. I want to definitely provide enough time that you who are on, we can field those questions, and Suu-Va will help us with fielding a lot of those questions. So Rachel, over to you.
Yeah. So we can always, there is a few components. People always ask me, can we add this or add different additional, such as voiceover and additional languages and those kind of things. If anybody, any programs are interested in supporting those kind of additions to the course that would be available to everyone nationwide, they're welcome to contact us at onlinecert@utah.edu. There is also a survey they can donate to specific components they would like to add or recommend. And then also either individually or by the organization. We have talked to Suu-Va and you can use CERT program funding for support as well. So those are options. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me on those. And then we'll move into questions.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen and pull up my Word document that has questions. And Danielle, my Outlook is acting up, and so I might need to go back to you and have you reference any questions I might have missed. So bear with me. Are you guys seeing my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. The first thing I do want to say is I want to thank the Utah team, Rachel and James, for creating this great program and making it available. A reminder, they are doing this pro bono. So the NCAA is not paying them, FEMA is not paying them. They're not making money off of spending their time and effort to make this available nationally. So I do want to thank them for that. But I also want to caution you and understand that they won't be able to answer questions really quickly, right? They're not spending 8 hours, 40 hours a week answering questions and trying to create guidance, but they have committed to doing the best they can to provide the tools and resources needed for the program to be successful. We understand there's going to be a lot of questions, and we'll talk a little bit about how program managers can work together to understand guidance and everything. So here's the questions. It's a very long list. We'll build this into an FAQ, and we'll answer the questions here as well as online and make it available. So we'll do it for all 3 webinars, and that way program managers can benefit from each other's questions. A lot of these questions were asked prior to the presenters talking about it too. So if they did talk about it, I'm going to try to move on really quickly so we don't waste time and get to the questions that weren't covered or will not be covered in upcoming webinars. So best ways to send questions. Rachel, you have a SurveyMonkey that was created for people to submit questions. And that link to the SurveyMonkey will be on the onlinecert.org website. So you can go there and complete that survey and ask questions. The Utah team will look at it and then answer them and put it on the FAQ. They might get back to you directly, but we also want to put it on the FAQ so everyone can benefit from the questions. The next one is, are there requirements such as 100 and 700 for the FEMA certificate. A couple of things. One, FEMA does not issue a CERT basic certificate that I know of, right? So when someone takes a CERT basic class at your local program, there's no way for you to tell FEMA, hey, I have 30 participants, here's the email, can you send them a certificate? FEMA only issues certificates on training that they deliver themselves. So if they're not involved in training, they're not going to give a certificate. If you go online, if you get the IS 100, 700, you're actually taking it on FEMA's LMS, so you actually will get a FEMA certificate. It is up to your program to decide how to give out certificates to your participants, and also up to your program to decide if you want to add anything else. I've heard of some CERT programs requiring IS 100 and 700 as part of the regular CERT basic training, but very few programs have that. It is up to you to require that of your CERT participants. Typically, this will be required for your volunteer cadre. So the people that take the training that you want to retain for preparedness or response activities, that's when you ask them to take 100 and 700 training. If they're not, it really doesn't do them any use to take that training because they don't need to really know the ICS system. But it's up to your program to implement that. That does not require anything from the hybrid CERT training or from the Utah team. Okay. Also, just as a quick friendly reminder, FEMA asks that you do not use the FEMA logo unless it is training that they deliver. So even if it's CERT training, FEMA hesitates to apply that logo because it implies that it was training given by FEMA, and it's not. All right, FEMA is not quality controlling your CERT basic class, so you typically just want to use your agency's logo and sometimes your state agency's logo, depending on your states and their rules and guidance on that. Next question, if someone started a training, can they go back to where they are? So I will refer to Rachel to answer that, or James, but I believe, yes, they can resume back on the slide that they left off on. But Rachel?
Yes, no, you're correct, Suu-Va, that is, wherever they leave off, it'll resume right where they are.
Thank you. Next question, where are the slide decks and items for instructors? So the toolkit is kind of where the program managers and instructors can really get all the items they need. There is no trainer for the hybrid CERT training outside of these 3 webinars and the guidance, right? I want to make sure people understand how they should view the hybrid training. The hybrid training, the online portion, really is just an alternative to the lecture portions of the CERT basic class. So you're replacing it as if you are doing lecture, but you say, hey, we're going to have you do the online training instead of having you come to a class and do the lecture. Obviously, the difference is that in a regular lecture class, you actually do the hands-on training in between as it comes up, and you demonstrate it and you have them practice, where on the hybrid training, that's not available. However, your program can implement it and use the hybrid training and kind of design it to be more close to a classroom-based environment. Some examples might be if you tell your participants, hey, take unit 1, and they want to have a webinar where we'll get together, answer your questions, and actually will show you some of these demonstrations. Hopefully down the line, the hope is to be able to create some training videos that show some of these hands-on skills so that the participants can see them from different angles in a more realistic environment and have that mental memory developed before they come into the class and do the physical training. That's not available right now, but of course, that's something that we want to have on the docket. There was also a question, I'll skip to this question, someone asking, hey, if we did all the in-person training but skipped module 5 because of COVID, or skipped a module because of whatever the case is, can we utilize the online training to replace just that one? The answer, and I'll have the Utah team confirm, the answer is yes. Because once again, you're just replacing the lecture portion of that one module with the online training, provided that you still do the in-person skills training. So while you may still do the skills training in your classroom-based environment, when you miss a module and you're having to do it online, you're missing that classroom-based portion. So you have to bring them in and do that classroom-based portion so that way it's in compliance with a full CERT training, right? When FEMA said that this training was good, it was based on how Utah said they were delivering it. They said, hey, we're delivering it this way. We're ensuring people do this. And FEMA says, great. If that's the case, then yes, this is a good training. But if you start removing things, then obviously it goes down, right? Because there's a couple of check marks that FEMA has to say what CERT training is. And that is the lecture portion, which is now replaced by online training, but also the hands-on portions throughout and disaster simulation. So those are the 3 components of CERT basic training, and you'll see that as the hybrid training as well. The online portion is what Utah has developed, right? Everything else, like how to do the skills day, that is their guidance and saying, hey, this is how we did it. We did the work for you. We're into the book, wrote down all these skills training exercises that the curriculum says you have to do it, and put it on a list for you. So now you can follow it without having to do that work yourself. So it's not like Utah said, hey, we think that you should do this too. It's say, this is part of CERT training. We put it on the list. And there was a question about the optional training. You can take the Word document and remove the optional training if you want, right? It is there that Utah has created, and they marked it so that programs can more easily see what's optional and what's mandatory. As a program manager, if you say, hey, we're just not going to do this, you're free to remove the optional, but you can't remove the mandatory because that was part of the mandatory requirement for the CERT training. Will the CERT flyer be available for the public? So once again, there's a version of the CERT flyer designed for program managers, really to pique your interest as a program manager on how to use the hybrid CERT training. I believe, and if there isn't one, I'm sure we'll create one to add, a template for a flyer to be used for your public. But really, you should still be using the same flyer you typically use to market your CERT training, except instead of saying, hey, classroom-based training starts here on this day, you're saying go online and do this training first. So you're really looking for that copy that you can copy and paste into your regular flyer, but you should not just toss out the hybrid CERT flyer as is, because once again, it's how you typically market your CERT training program and how you typically deliver your CERT training program and how you're going to implement the hybrid CERT training into your CERT curriculum. This is not a, hey, go online and have your people take CERT there and you can consider them CERT trained. Because once again, it's just the online portion. You have to do all the rest of it to make sure that they're fully CERT trained, okay? VR simulations. So there were a couple of VR simulations that's been added as part of the module on the Utah LMS. Just so you guys know, we could not get them in the time week that we had ADA accessible, so they will not be available on the California version of this training. So that will be one of the differences. If you want to maintain the VR, you're going to have to go to the Utah LMS to get that. Once again, it was an issue with making sure it was ADA accessible, and we just couldn't make it happen in the time we had, maybe in the future. In terms of other VR simulations, once again, when Utah developed this, they developed it with their hazards in mind. And the contract we have with the developer for the California updates, we did not have the VR simulations because we needed to spend the time and the money on other things that we had to have for it to be available in California. So there aren't going to be any additional VR simulations at this point. Doesn't mean that it can't be added. And as Rachel mentioned, just like how California partnered with Utah and basically Immersive to add additional functionality, if your state or local program has funding and say, hey, we love this hybrid CERT training, but we would love to add this to it, go ahead and connect with Rachel to say, hey, how can we support this training with our grant dollars or local dollars to make this better and make it available? What we do ask is that whatever you develop is available for free nationwide. You don't have to host it, right? You don't have to say, hey, we can't make it available on our LMS because of the bandwidth, but we need to be able to allow you to share that coding and the software with the Utah team and the California team to make sure that we have a consistent version of the hybrid training going forward. We also will make sure that whatever you add stays in compliance with CERT. So people will say, hey, we want swiftwater rescue added to this thing. The answer is going to be no, right? If you want swiftwater rescue, you can partner with 360 Immersive and do your own thing. It will not be connected in any way to the online CERT training because we have to keep it faithful to regular CERT or what is in line with CERT. You can add additional annexes, you can add some disaster deployment activities and whatnot, but we don't want anything that's just too far away from the CERT. Recordings. The recordings will be available on the onlinecert.org website. So as soon as we have it, we'll upload it and you can go there and view the recording. And once again, once all 3 webinars are done, there'll be a post-test that you can take to kind of get a certificate of completion for this training. Is there a way for instructors to run through the online portion without having to register? Registering for this training is very simple. You're putting in your email address and your name, and that's pretty much it, your agency, right? There's no commitment, there's no cost or anything like that. The reason why you're registering is so that when you log back in, the system knows who you are and you can log back in and it can track who's taking the training. So no, we can't make it any simpler than that. But we want to say we do recommend that instructors and program managers definitely go through the online CERT training because you need to understand what your participants are seeing so that you can better prepare for the in-person portion and disaster simulation. And this also may know what the differences are. And I would also say at least view the first few modules before deciding to roll this training out, right? It may not be a great fit for your jurisdiction or how you want to use your CERT program, so make sure you check on it first. Does this training include pandemic plans and accommodations? So we made sure that with the update to the hybrid training, it's updated to the 2019-2020 CERT basic curriculum. And we basically say whatever's in the CERT basic curriculum is going to be in the hybrid training. If it's not in there, we're not going to add it, because we don't want to create the issue where there's a guidance issue or FEMA issue or state issue that says, hey, this is not part of CERT training. Why did you add this? Now we can't use this because for some reason we can't teach this skill, right? So we want to make sure that that hybrid training by itself is in line with the updated curriculum, and triage is an optional module, right? It is going to be there so anyone can see it, but it's up to the program to enforce that their members take that training before they can come in for the in-person portion. Triage is not available yet. We are working, and like I mentioned in the chat box, our California LMS team is uploading the updates right now for the English module, and then we're going to finalize the triage. We didn't want to rush it because we want to ensure that that module is going to be good. And because it's optional anyway, we didn't have to have it up right now, but it should be up in the next couple of weeks. And if you are on the email list and you sign up to be on the email list for the hybrid CERT training, you'll get a little email that says, hey, triage is not available, go ahead and take it. Okay. So does the VR keep time? And Rachel did mention in the chat box, it does. There's a time that the VR counts down. So it simulates in a disaster having to make decisions based on time, and you can move around and do that. So I already covered the how to make triage optional. Once again, that is a program level decision. If you lose your password, Rachel, what's the best way for someone to retrieve their password for their LMS? Is there a link or do they email you?
There is an option within the LMS to reset it. If they still have issues, they can feel free to email me and I can get it reset.
Thank you. I've already covered if you want to just use one or two modules in the hybrid training. Some people mentioned that the connection to the videos were broken. In most cases, that should be either a browser issue or a latency issue on your end. We have tested it and we haven't seen any issue with it. So if there's an issue that's on your end, however, you can email and say, hey, we email the emails on online services. I went to this video and it's broken, right? Once again, we are updating it and Utah's updating it, and 2 years down the line, they may be updating some of the videos and there might be some accidental broken links. So we do want to hear that, but definitely do check. I always say check another browser before you raise it up and say, hey, I have an issue with this. Or even check another system. If you are on a laptop, go to your desktop, go to your phone and try it and see if it works there as well. But in most cases, we should have caught all those issues. What will the online program be named? So the naming convention for this is still just the hybrid CERT training, and I usually put developed by Utah. And the reason why I put that is because, once again, there are other states who are working on their own hybrid CERT training system, or a year or two down the line, there may be another one. And hybrid is kind of very generic, so you want to ensure that we say it is developed by Utah. For the California version, we don't say it's the California hybrid CERT training, right? It's on our California LMS, but we are trying to position Utah as the original owners of this training and position Rachel and James as the national program manager. So when there's a guidance issue or there's an update or there's some feedback, we want it to go through them. So there's a single point of collection and also of consideration to say, okay, this is what the guidance looks like. We don't want different people to say, oh, do it this way or do it that way. But once again, that's guidance, right? There's going to be some things that are required to make sure that this training remains eligible. But besides that, the guidance really comes from your state or territory CERT coordinator on how to implement this kind of training, or even how to implement CERT training in general. For the quiz, so Rachel and James, to confirm, if someone fails the quiz, they can go directly back into the quiz to retake it as often as they want, correct? And if they close out and they come back after they study some more, can they skip directly to the quiz, or do they have to go to the beginning and click the forward arrows? What does that look like?
It should start where they left off.
Well, and when the student completes a particular unit, There's no wall for them. They can go all the way to the end in the beginning as often as they wish. So as soon as they're done with that unit, they can advance straight to the end of unit quiz.
Great. I also want to emphasize that as participants take the training for the first time, there's a time lockout. So they can't just go on and be like, oh, I'm going to skip to the end and take the quiz. There's actually a requirement for them to sit on a slide until the lecture stops. The only exception is going to be on videos, because videos, once you click on it, you can go ahead and advance. But in most cases, videos are optional anyway in a CERT basic class environment. But we want to ensure that there was no skipping. People had to at least commit the amount of time to the training. There are also knowledge checks throughout the training where they will test some skills. And as already mentioned, at any time, they can click on the top right-hand corner and open up the 2019-2020 version of the CERT curriculum to kind of refresh their information. And the slides and the narration should tell them what page they are on. Or for knowledge checks, hey, you just missed this, go here to review it and refresh, okay? In the California version, the post-test for each quiz, I believe, is going to be separate from the module. So once they finish the module, they're going to go in and take the post-test. And that's just an issue with our LMS and how we have to set it up that way. Merit. So once they complete the training on the Utah LMS, they should automatically get a merit. So after each module, once you are done and you complete the post-test, the system is set up so that you get a little email that says, hey, you got a little merit for this module. And once you open that email, it has an attachment with your certificate in it. For the California version, it's not going to be that quick. We can't automate it, so we have to manually do it, maybe on a once a week schedule, and then people will get their merits.
Hey, Suu-Va, can I comment on
yes.
that? Just to make sure it's clear, the program manager will not automatically get that merit from your students. It's up to the students to forward that to you. So you'll have to communicate that expectation with your students.
Great, thank you. Yes. The students won't get to know how to access the training unless the program manager sends it, but you want to tell the students to forward you their merit as confirmation, or even print it and bring it to the class. Students, so they'll get an email with the merit whether or not they have an email account or an account with merit. And that's because when when they register with the LMS, they already enter their email address, and that is what is triggered in the merit system to send them a certificate. Now, once they if they create their own merit account, they can then go and see all their merits and reference it whenever they want. But the merit system is not required for them to have already created an account. They'll still get that email address. The capstone for the final merit, I believe that's just more of a completion certificate saying that you completed all the modules, and we just call it capstone. You'll see this sometimes if you take various IS courses on EMI's website. Once you take like 9 of them, certain ones, you'll get a nice thing that says you completed this series of training. And this is kind of similar. So they get triggered and show that they have completed all the modules, all the required modules for the online CERT training. We're going to cover a little bit about the skills checkoffs during that webinar. But once again, it's going to be very similar to how you run a CERT basic class anyway, right? We're not training firefighters where it's a task book and they have to demonstrate expert knowledge of it. But we want to make sure that the skills that you typically would demonstrate, you demonstrate during the in-person portion. The skills that you typically will have your students demonstrate themselves and practice, like fire suppression, you will have them practice it themselves too. So it's going to be in a very similar type of environment.
And Suu-Va, if I may,
yes.
Just on that question, again, we'll cover this on September 29th as well, but it's very important that each of your instructors understand the skills pertaining to it. They are the ones who are going to be signing off on that skills checklist, whether or not that student has completed that. So it's important that your instructors really understand it so they know how to coach it. No, it's not pass, fail kind of criteria, but it's determined by the instructor if that person has either passed that skill or failed that skill. The goal obviously is every student passes that skill as the instructor coaches them through it, has the student do the skill, and making sure that that student understands. The instructor's goal is to get them to pass the skill.
Thank you. The next question, does Utah have a skills day schedule that you may be able to come in and watch? I think with COVID, that's not something that Utah is trying to have, but very similar to CERT exercises, CERT basic classes. Sometimes some programs open it up to neighboring programs to come and join in. Typically you would check in, but Utah, what do you think? Do you think you'll open up your skills day for people to fly in and check out?
James?
So that all of the local programs schedule and carry out their own course, and it's all at different times. No, there's not a state of Utah level course that's being offered. Every offering is all local jurisdictional level. So that's determined by the local jurisdiction, not necessarily us at the state level.
Okay, great.
Yes,
the next class is going to be, go ahead.
What was that, Rachel? Say that again.
it might be an option to record something like that as an option.
So
Yeah,
if
your
we
mic's
get
cutting
a
in and out.
recording of that may be
Yeah.
helpful.
Yes. So they have it on their to-dos as possible. And if they do record it, we'll share it. Just understand recording is not as simple as having someone with a camera and hitting record. You have to cut it and have it prepped and do the sound and everything. But more things to add as we continue to push this training. We already covered the proficiency thing, but I do want to emphasize also, CERT is open to people with access and functional needs and others with disabilities. That pertains to the skills training as well. So if there are people with access and functional needs, you're obviously not going to have somebody who's in a wheelchair say, hey, you need to get up and do this training, right? Or otherwise you can't check it off. Use the normal common sense you typically would use in a CERT basic class as you have people participate and do the training and skills as well. So don't feel like that's going to be a barrier to people taking the hybrid training and getting their regular CERT certificate. Question for you, James. Someone noticed that the practical skills portion changed from 4 to 16 hours. They said that originally on the website it was less hours, but now it's more hours. Can you comment if that changed at all, or maybe that's just somebody reading something wrong?
From 4 to 16? So I suppose I'm not sure, because I'm not sure where that 4 hours comes from or where that's being referenced to. But
So
in the guidance, it has always been, for this hybrid model, it has always been 16 hours worth of skill sets. We've never said 4 hours, but if you look at the basic CERT course instructor guide, you might think that the basic CERT course instructor guide may suggest that there are 4 hours worth of skills. But if you take a good hard look at all of the skills on the CERT skills checklist, you'll quickly realize that those cannot be done in a 4-hour time frame. In fact, 16 hours would be considered the minimum, because it is difficult to get through all of those skills in a 16-hour time frame. But we set that as a benchmark to at least go to.
Yeah, combined, it's going to be 28 or so hours for commitment for the participant. That changes a little bit with the number of participants and instructors, but understand this is not a shortcut to do less training. What it does is it allows you to cast a wider net that we will take the online training independently. So you get the people who are hesitant to come into a classroom-based environment, but they'll try something online and see if they like it. You also will reduce your classroom-based attrition. So we all know that if you do training over 8 weeks and you do one night a week, by the 8th week, you have a lot less people than your first week, because people will have scheduling conflicts, and once they miss one, they just stop going, or they feel like, oh, this is not for me, or they get nervous, or they're like, oh my God, I didn't know there was gonna be so much interaction, and I'm too shy to do that. But when people do the online training, they're like, you're gonna find the people who show up and submit their certificate, say, oh, all these people are committed. They like what they saw, they want more. So now you're bringing people in, and you're not worrying about people who are half invested. They should all be invested by the time they come in to classroom-based training. And for your instructors, for programs that have limited availability to instructors, either because of their pay that you guys are required to pay them for, or volunteers that can only volunteer so many hours, you can now schedule more training classes because you're using your instructors less, right? There's going to be more work for the program manager to register and capture information about people taking online training. But once again, that's why this is an option for you as a CERT program to utilize, provided your CERT or territory CERT coordinator approved the use of the training. In terms of, go ahead.
Just in regards to Suu-Va's, citation of the time frames, right? You might look at it from a program perspective and think, wow, that's a lot more time than we are suggesting. Now, we're approaching this with an understanding of full course completion and the videos that are attached, as well as the time necessary to be able to review every single skill set that is in there. If you were to talk to FEMA headquarters and you were to say, hey, if a CERT program did the basic CERT course in the traditional model in the way that everything is designed using all the best practices, then it's very likely that you would see those types of courses 30 hours long. And that's because they're not skipping content or material. You'll realize with the way that this is set up that those students are getting full exposure to all of the principles therein. They're not being skipped, and there's still obviously room for more depending on what you choose, but we are using those best practices that FEMA is suggesting. That's one of the reasons why it is the length that it is.
Thank you, James. Will certificates have a completion unique numbers or any way to authenticate? Not really. There's really no way for us to create that. And even if we put a unique number there, that would require the program managers to go to a database, search the unique number, and make sure it applies to the participant, right? We're just going to hope that the participants aren't going to cheat their way into CERT, and I don't see why they would. Getting a certificate with CERT doesn't really get you anything, and it really is just to prepare you as an individual. So it should be okay. I don't think there's been an issue yet, but there's really no way to confirm that. The only way is for you to just ask them to forward you the email from Merit that they got, and that way it comes directly from the Merit system, and you can see that chain. But even then, I don't know if it's worth trying to ensure that people don't cheat, right? This might be a 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million type scenario. But Rachel and James, do you see this as an issue? Have you seen this as an issue?
So Suu-Va, there is a certificate number and a date on all the certificates. I guess we could verify that. I don't see it being an issue, no.
Yeah, okay. The manual is once again the updated version, and you'll see sometimes the manuals reported as a 2019 version or 2020 version, and that's just a matter of FEMA contracting, and when they make it available on the publications request list, they have to list it a certain way. But in all intents and purposes, I believe it's the 2020 version, but it was approved in 2019 prior to it being released in January, I think 8th of 2020, but it's the same version. Now, FEMA has said that they'll be updating their CERT manual more often than they have in the past, and we'll see how often that actually is. But for now, it refers to the most current version of the CERT training. And that's the end of my questions. Danielle, do you have any questions on your list that we missed?
I have a couple left over and then a couple new ones. So I'll share my screen really quick, and you can look at these questions and go over them. I don't know if the first couple were shared or not, but you can take a look. So can the skills be tested while the students are still taking the online portion, or do they need to finish the online session first? First one.
James, do you want to answer that one? Or, I mean, we recommend that they do the online portion first.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to comment on that. That becomes a guidance issue on how you want to use the CERT program. Once again, the hybrid training allows participants to take the modules one at a time. As a program, you can say, hey, take the first module and then come in and we'll do the skills training, or take these modules and come in and do the skills training, or go on a webinar. You decide how you want to implement and how you want our participants to utilize the mix of the online training modules with any in-person activity. That will defeat the purpose though, if you're going to bring them in that many times to just have them come in for the lecture portion, right? Because there's travel time involved, there's setup time involved. It doesn't make it smoother for your program. However, once again, you have that leeway. The online portion is just that. It's the online portion replacing the lecture portion of the training, and you can mix and match. The greatest thing about this is for programs who says, hey, we just don't have an instructor that can teach the terrorism module, right? Or the disaster psychology module, but we can have someone do the skills check. Then you can just implement the online training for those modules. So you still have that training, do the in-person portion, but now you can save a little bit of in-person time for your instructors if that's the case. Obviously, ideally, this was designed to do all of it online, and then all of the in-person skills and all of the disaster simulation. However, as more programs are utilizing this and trying to find creative ways to mix this in to maximize the potential for the program, we're willing to look at it and say, yep, that sounds great, or say we defer this to your state or territory to decide what's the best way to implement this. Most of what we'll say is, yes, best guidance would be this is how you might want to implement it, right? That's based on experience that James and Rachel have seen from Utah. That's based on my experience as a CERT coordinator for California, and we'll have some feedback from other people as well. And the nice thing is there's going to be analytical data that's going to tell us, hey, this many programs are using it, and they have found that this is more effective or less effective. It will actually get some more feedback, right? This has been great in Utah and great for a few programs that have implemented it. But once we see hundreds of programs use it, we might see there's a section or a type of program where they need different guidance, or the implementation has to change slightly to match their kind of program.
Great, and I think that goes with the second question too, that it would be up to the local program. Someone had said towards the beginning of it, do we have access to the CERT flyer that you went over, James, at the beginning?
Yeah, the flyer is available on onlinecert.org.
Awesome. Question is there time to watch all the videos included in the 12 hours estimated for completion? I think you guys were saying 16 to 20, so yes, I'll just say yes. Is there a medical officer reviewing the triage module?
So the triage module is currently being reviewed by a couple of subject matter experts in the state of California. If you would like to take a look at it, please send an email to your state or territory CERT coordinator and have them forward that request to me. And the reason why that is because I don't know you, and I want to ensure that if we take feedback from people, we take it from people who've been vetted to say, yes, this person knows what they're talking about and is a leader in our state or territory for CERT. And by checking in with your state or territory coordinator, that tells me, hey, at least I can say that that state or territory confirmed it and said that this person knows what they're talking about, and we could take their feedback to heart. Otherwise, we're going to run into issues of people who want CERT a certain way, but it's not the way that it should be. But otherwise, we do have certain instructors, very prominent certain instructors in the state of California reviewing the triage module. And we did base most of the stuff from the old curriculum. And James, do you want to comment a little bit more about how the triage module is being developed?
I think what you said is sufficient. Obviously, the 2011 materials are the only materials available to kind of start pulling from. But as mentioned by CERT program managers all over the nation, that there are content within there that needs to be updated to what is considered current. And so that is being reviewed and looked at by those subject matter experts before that will ever be released. We want to make sure that that content is accurate, for sure. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and we can talk about this further in the future when people what specifically to talk about the triage module. What's the dropout level for the online training? Rachel and James, do you guys have any numbers on people who started the training but never completed?
The dropout level is pretty low. The majority of those signed up fully complete the training.
I concur what Rachel said.
Great. I don't understand the question about, do I take the manager training after the regular student training? In general, you take the CERT basic training, and then if you want to teach CERT basic, you take the CERT trainer class. If you want to help coordinate or manage a CERT program, you take the CERT program manager class. Both those two classes have the prerequisite of taking CERT basic before taking those two classes, and also require that you get approval from your sponsoring agency to take that training. The online CERT training, the hybrid course, does not have any manager level training. The only thing available for managers is the toolbox and a toolkit of all the stuff and on the online CERT for you to kind of understand how to use it and have some templates for you to modify as appropriate for your program to use the training. Yes, actually, the last question, is there a way for students to submit questions to the instructor while taking the online course? Well, not to your CERT program manager, unless you tell them in your flyer, say, hey, as you're taking this training, if you have questions, email me. And you want them to email you as opposed to the Utah team, because those questions might be specific to how CERT is handled in your jurisdiction, how disaster response and preparedness is handled in your jurisdiction, what are some common disasters in your area, and all that good stuff. There is a way for people to submit a question if it's a tech question, like, hey, I can't get my password to work, or I can't log in correctly. And there'll be in the LMS itself a way for people to submit a question and it's answered. And I think that's, yeah, Rachel, do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yes, there's live IT available for any IT questions or questions on the course. And then they can also email onlinecert@utah.edu.
And if I might add to that, the relationship between the student and your local basic CERT course instructor, all of that happens with Q&A and all the questions and learning and things like that. That relationship really forms with that 16 hours of classroom time. The online experience is just the student and the electronic online experience, and does not necessarily involve the program manager or the instructors during that time. But just as Suu-Va suggested, which is great, the verbiage you use in your marketing materials and after they register really sets the expectation on how you want those students to communicate with you while they're taking that online training environment. And that would be the suggestion. Try to get them to talk to you because you're trying to form a relationship with them.
Okay, we have 4 minutes left on this webinar, and I don't see any new questions that we need to tackle at the moment. So I'll leave it for closing statements from Rachel, James, and Jennifer, and kind of tease the next webinar.
Suu-Va, I have a quick question. Did you want to mention the discussion board you have on your website for all members for any of the hybrid CERT questions?
Sure. I actually will share my screen. So many people ask what the NCA is. The NCA is a National CERT Association. It was an association that was created in partnership with FEMA to support CERT programs nationwide and really to facilitate resource sharing and communication. So when you join the NCA, and you can go to nationalcert.org to learn more about how to join the NCA, there's a portal. And within the portal, we have a discussion board. And you can go into discussions, and there's several categories. And we'll have a category dedicated for the hybrid CERT training, where you can go in and post a question. And then hopefully Rachel and James will monitor this regularly and answer your questions. But this will also allow for you to get feedback from other programs who are implementing the hybrid CERT training as well. And this will be true for other topics within the portal. But that's what that is. And we may go more in depth in this in the second or third webinar as time permits, but with the 3 minutes left, I don't want to touch it too much. But otherwise, yeah. Rachel, anything else from your end?
No, thank you. Thanks, Suu-Va.
Okay, James, do you have anything?
Just a great big thank you to all of you. As we have been laying out this tool in front of you, our goal is to make sure that you have access to these tools, that you know where to go to get them, and that you're understanding how to use those. Again, Rachel and I will be available to kind of help you along the process. So don't hesitate to reach out to us and ask us those questions that you have. So just making sure that you know where those tools are. Obviously, we want your feedback because as you start to pilot this effort with your own local jurisdiction, we'd love to see the results that you see as well. And our end goal will be to take the results that you provide us and with the surveys that are available on the onlinecert.org website. Those surveys are seeking your input to help us create a document that will show the effectiveness of this tool. And your input for that is greatly needed. So at this point, our encouragement is to start planning your next course. Create your registration portal for your local program. Start marketing your course. Get students to sign up with you and start getting your instructors ready for that hands-on classroom portion. And Rachel and I are willing to kind of help coach you through. As you have questions and things like that, you can contact us and help you out. Any further questions?
Jennifer, do you have anything?
No, I really don't. I do appreciate everybody's hard work, and we continue to make each version of CERT and each update, just as receiving all that feedback is really helpful. And there are groups of people compiling this information and giving their best updates as well. So it's an iterative process, and we just appreciate everyone's patience with that. Thank you.
Thank you. For people who have issues with the onlinecert.org link, I did post the full link that it redirects you to currently, so you can click that. The next webinar will be the same time next week, so Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, and the last webinar will be following Tuesday at the same time, and we'll be posting the links shortly after they are done. Just understand that we all have full-time jobs also, and then you have to wait for the Zoom link. I want to thank Danielle Bell at San Ramon Valley for hosting this webinar and the next two webinars and making her website or her Zoom platform available to us. With that, we want to thank everybody for taking the time to be on today. But once again, make sure your CERT or territory approves the training before you start using it. Make sure. Thank you.